The Aroostook National Wildlife Refuge is a gorgeous area, Jeff.
Yeah, it is.
You got the trees, the birds, that pretty pond right over there.
Yep.
We're the only two people that I can see in this remote park today. But I feel a little silly dressed like this. Don't you think we're taking COVID-19 precautions a little too far?
Well, of course, we wear masks when
Yes.
we're out among the public, right? But the reason we're wearing hazmat suits today isn't because of COVID.
Then what should I be worried about?
We're worried about something even more deadly if you get too close. I'm talking about radioactivity.
Wait, radioactivity?
We're in Limestone, Maine, less than 5 miles from the Canadian border, searching for a building with some deep, dark secrets. 1.2 megatons of secrets, as a matter of fact. This is a building that may hold monsters, which is why locals for decades have called this place the Vampire House. Hi, I'm Jeff Belanger.
And I'm Ray Auger. Welcome to episode 157 of the New England Legends podcast. If you give us about 10 minutes, we'll give you something strange to talk about today. Though I think we're going to need at least 20 minutes for this one. Forgive us.
Thank you for joining us on our mission to chronicle every legend in New England, one story at a time. We do that through this weekly podcast, of course, through the New England Legends television series that you can watch right now on Amazon Prime, through our website, and now
we continue our mission through our fancy New England Legends app for your smartphone.
yes,
You can get this app for free through the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store right now. This app was developed for us by Lauren Middleton of Forest City Marketing in Connecticut.
the app is the latest tool in uniting our community of legend seekers. Not only does it give you access to the latest episodes of our podcast, but it's got this super cool interactive map of New England with pins to every story we've covered so far.
Love it.
Now, the map is updated each week, so as we continue to chronicle new tales, you get the map and it shows you the new pins. And wherever you are, you open it up and it'll show you the closest stories to wherever you are right now. And you can even get directions to them. So if you're looking to get out of the house in a safe way, there's plenty of remote locations and weird tales to check out while you listen to our podcast.
Plus, and this is our favorite part,
Yep.
it allows you to contact us and report your local legends, which may end up on a future episode. Which means more pins in the map and more places for you to visit.
Right.
So please download our free app and become a bigger part of the New England Legends community.
Of course, we also want to thank our Patreon patrons who are sponsoring this week's episode, and they play such a huge role in our growth. For just $3 per month, they get early access to new episodes, plus bonus episodes and content that no one else gets to hear. Just head over to patreon.com/New England Legends to sign up. In fact, our patrons have already been playing with our app for over a week, because they get everything first.
All right, Jeff. So we're looking for a vampire house in the Aroostook National Wildlife Refuge.
That we are.
Okay.
But keep in mind,
Yep.
this refuge only dates back to 1998.
Oh, wow.
Before this was a wildlife sanctuary, this land all belonged to Loring Air Force Base, a base with secrets. Though Vampire House is more of a nickname, in reality, the building we're looking for is a Cold War artifact with some dark history and a frightening legend. This lead came to us through a mysterious email from one of our listeners. This is one of those cases when a person's credentials made it so we just couldn't resist digging deeper on a story. So we got this mysterious emailer on Skype.
Hi, my name's David Hammond, and in the 1980s, I served as a security policeman at the 42nd SPF in Loring Air Force Base, Maine.
Whoa. All right. So this guy is in the know.
Absolutely.
All right. So what's the story?
The story that they would either use to scare everyone or, oh, this is what happened, was that in the Vamp House, whatever was going on in there, there was an accident. No one could tell you what kind of accident. No one could tell you what substances may or may not have been involved in the accident, but there was an accident and they sealed it up. They concreted the whole thing. They welded the door shut just to avoid the building because it was at this point contaminated.
And of course, there's the stories of the monsters inside, or maybe victims would be a better way to describe them.
That was the big legend. There was a huge accident, a couple of radiated bodies. They basically died instantly, and they were so contaminated the military just sealed them in there because it was too dangerous to deal with.
Man, oh man, I have so many questions.
Me too. We have a lot to cover on this trip, Jeff.
Yeah.
All right, first, a little more background. David Hammond enlisted in the Air Force right out of high school. After his training, Loring was his first assignment. And it's pretty critical that we all understand that the main function of Loring Air Force Base was to store and deploy nuclear weapons. So, David, when you got to Loring in 1987, were there still nukes there?
I suppose it's okay to say yes, since it's not a huge secret. Yes. Part of my duties as a security policeman was to provide security for those assets, the what we would call Class A assets. Most of them were, of course, stored in the weapons storage area, which is where the Vamp House makes its appearance.
And the Vamp House is why we're here. We should point out that this structure has been unofficially called the Vamp House for decades, but it's locals and urban explorers who have assumed the name was short for Vampire House. We have a lot to unpack.
The big story was that it all linked back to the Manhattan Project during World War II and the development of nuclear weapons.
If we head deeper into the park here at the Aroostook National Wildlife Refuge, we should be able to see some of the old bunkers and buildings in this clearing right up ahead.
Oh man, look, it's kind of hard to miss, right?
Yeah, it sure is. Besides the obvious mounds of earth that once covered the bunkers, there's a 2-story cement house right across the field, and that must be the Vampire House.
All right. Well, that's just eerie looking out there on its own like that.
Yeah.
Let's head back in time to 1942 and set this up. It's 1942, and we're 2,111 miles southwest of Limestone, Maine, in the tiny town of Los Alamos, New Mexico, a town that just sits right outside of Santa Fe. This is a town with its own secrets. We're going into arguably the most top-secret operation in American history, a secret codenamed the Manhattan Project.
Major General Leslie Groves of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers is working with nuclear physicist Robert Oppenheimer and his team to develop a super weapon for the U.S. military. A weapon so large, so destructive, it could theoretically put an end to all wars.
All right, from here we jump ahead just 3 years to July 16th, 1945, to witness the fruits of Oppenheimer's labor. It's almost 5:30 in the morning here at the codenamed Trinity test site. It's an obscure and remote New Mexico desert area called Jornada del Muerto, which translates to Journey of the Dead Man. That's when the clock strikes 5:29 a.m. And just like that, the world has changed forever.
Less than 1 month later, on August 6, 1945, in Hiroshima, Japan, the United States becomes the first country to drop a nuclear weapon on people. 3 days later, it happens again on Nagasaki. The United States is a superpower with a super weapon.
World War II is over less than a month after Hiroshima, but no one is naive enough to think other countries aren't hard at work developing the same thing. Though World War II is over, the arms race has just begun. And race is the critical word here.
Nuclear weapons are dropped from airplanes. That's the delivery system. So for the United States to defend itself against any kind of attack, the country needs ways to quickly deploy these weapons. It's 1947 when ground is broken for a new military base in Limestone, Maine. Limestone Army Field opens in 1950 with a capacity of over 100 B-36 Peacemaker strategic bombers.
The B-36 is the largest piston-engined aircraft ever built. This plane is huge, with a range of 10,000 miles, and it can carry over 87,000 pounds of payload.
So to give you some perspective, it's about 4,000 miles to Moscow, Russia, from Limestone, Maine.
Add in a refuel in an allied country, and basically the United States now has the ability to deliver a nuke just about anywhere in Europe and most of the Soviet Union.
1950 also marks the official start of the Cold War, an arms race for superiority and technology. And of course, the word race makes it obvious that speed is the most important thing here. This base in Limestone, Maine is going to play a key role. Remember, we have over 100 giant aircraft just sitting here.
And those aircraft need weapons.
And you sure don't want to store nukes too close to all the moving parts of an airplane and all the people working on the base.
Well, of course not. That's an accident waiting to happen.
Right, so you need to store the weapons close enough to get to them quickly, but not too close in case there's an accident or an attack. So on the eastern border of the property, they build the weapon storage area. Originally named Site Easy, it would become officially known as Caribou Air Force Station, a top-secret, maximum security facility all on its own, but integral to the main base just 2 miles away.
Most of the construction at Caribou Air Force Station is underground. The bunkers that hold nuclear weapons have to be able to withstand an attack, earthquakes, or anything else that can fall from above. There are tunnels connecting these various structures, too, because you may need to move in secret to service or arm these weapons.
Now, there's some obvious above-ground structures here as well. There's concrete sniper towers for added security. There's other buildings that serve as offices and security facilities, but there's a couple of other strange structures, like this one, officially named Building 260 Storage Area A.
This building is both ugly and scary looking.
It is.
But not that large.
Yeah.
It's about the size of a 3-bedroom house. It's 2 stories of solid concrete. There's concrete rectangles on each side that do look like windows from a distance, but up close, it's obviously they're mainly just frames.
Right.
And on the southeastern side of the building, there's a small porch and what looks like a bank vault door. As far as I can tell, that's the only way inside.
From a distance, this whole area could kind of look like a neighborhood, which is the point, a bit of a suburban camouflage. Now, back to Building 260. The structure has walls 10 feet thick on the sides, 10 feet thick on the bottom, and 20 feet thick on the top. Inside, there are 4 rooms, or vaults, each with their own doors. And inside those vaults are racks made to hold nuclear capsules. These capsules contain the fissionable material the weapons need. They're like the heart of the nuclear bomb. And Building 260 can hold 60 of these capsules.
All right, I got it. So all the actual bombs in all of the bunkers around this facility aren't much good without these capsules.
Exactly.
That also explains why these concrete sniper towers are so close to Building 260. This is a key piece.
Right. If it's go time for nuclear war, someone has to come to Building 260, grab these capsules, then bring them to the bunkers, get the bombs fully loaded or armed, then get those bombs onto the planes at the airbase 2 miles away.
Well, that sounds like a lot that has to happen.
It also sounds damn scary and time-consuming, especially if you're doing that in an emergency. But that's how it goes in an arms race.
All right, so in 1954, the base is renamed Loring Air Force Base in honor of Medal of Honor recipient Major Charles J. Loring, Jr. Then time passes, and the base grows. Jet engines replace piston engines. The aircraft get even bigger with the ability to carry more payload even greater distances. Then Loring is designated a Strategic Air Command Base, meaning the country views this base as a key component in its nuclear capacities. It's a heavy responsibility for everyone stationed here.
During the 1950s, nuclear technology is evolving fast. The thing about races is that it's about speed, not accuracy. But as the weapons and capabilities start to pile up, the United States government can now focus its time and effort into building bigger, better, and hopefully safer bombs and missiles. And pretty soon, the technology evolves to the point where you no longer need to store the fissionable material outside of the weapon. And that makes Building 260 kind of obsolete.
Though there's a lot we don't know here, here's what we do know. At some point in the late 1950s or very early 1960s, Building 260 is sealed shut. I mean, sealed shut in a way that they don't want anyone ever going inside again. I mean, it's closed.
Right.
And the people who know what may or may not have happened inside, they're not talking.
In 1962, Caribou Air Force Station is officially shut down, and ownership is transferred to Loring Air Force Base. Many of the buildings are no longer needed. However, the nukes are still stored in the bunkers, so security's tight. It's just that not so many people are required to service the station like before because this former base is now strictly a weapons storage area. But that building, 260, those in charge of security can't stop looking at it. It's all on its own. It's sealed up. There's rumors of an accident, but no one can really say what happened. Add in some years, and pretty soon security and other personnel authorized to be in the area don't call it Building 260 anymore. They call it the Vamp House.
And we're not sure why it's called the Vamp House.
No.
But I did look up the dictionary definition of vamp.
Okay.
It's a noun, and it's technically the upper front part of a boot or a shoe.
Okay.
It's basically the critical part of the shoe or boot where you might tie your shoelaces.
Okay.
And, right where you tie the bow?
Right.
That's the Vamp.
Which kind of makes some sense in a weird way, right? I mean, these fissionable capsules would have been the critical part of the weapon.
Maybe. Or maybe folks who work on the base heard stories about a monster inside. From here, we jump ahead to 1987. A fresh-faced kid named David Hammond has been assigned security for the weapons storage area at Loring Air Force Base. He's heard the stories about the Vamp House. He's asked around, but no one seems to know anything about it. It's been sealed up for years, and no one really knows why. And then, on one security detail, David sees something he'll never forget.
I was riding a security patrol with a staff sergeant, and he and I were sitting in our truck doing what security guys do, just kind of gabbing. And another team, and they weren't security, and another like environmental services team, military, came into the weapons storage area, and they came to the Vamp House. And these two guys kind of walked around with what we sort of assumed were Geiger counters. We never got a close look at their tool. We never got a close look at what they were doing. We monitored them to make sure they weren't getting close to any of the actual bunkers. So the staff sergeant drives up to them afterwards, and he says, "Hey, what's going on? What's up with the Vamp House?" And the guy, I'll remember this forever. He just shakes his head and he goes, "It's best just to stay away." Like, all right.
Loring Air Force Base is scheduled for shutdown by the U.S. government in the early 1990s. And all of those assets...
Read nukes.
Right, nukes, are moved out. But this isn't the end of the story for the Vamp House. Because sometimes where there's smoke, there's also fire. And that brings us back to today. So we dug into this story.
And dug
until we found out some alarming information that makes us believe there may be a lot of truth to the Vampire House legend.
While it's not unusual for a team to inspect old buildings for any sign of contaminants before a base is shut down,
sure,
what is highly unusual is the amount of manpower, effort, and resources that would go into building 260, or the Vamp House, and the amount of controversy that would get stirred up. And what's even more unusual than that is when elected public officials like U.S. Senator William Cohen, Senator George Mitchell, and at the time U.S. Representative Olympia Snowe get involved in an otherwise nondescript concrete building at Loring Air Force Base.
This is where the legend of an accident, contamination, and maybe even some people still locked inside start to echo in our heads. And that's when we uncovered some documents and newspaper articles related to the Vamp House. Ray, we don't typically do this, but I think we need to travel back in time once again to figure this out.
All right, I'm ready. This time we're heading back to the winter of 1992. All right, picture this. It's January 9th, 1992. It's already understood that this base is closing,
right,
and the lands are going to be turned over to, well, someone. We don't know if it's a state, the county, or someone else. But we do know the buildings and structures need to be thoroughly checked out before that happens.
Which makes sense. So, on January 9th, 12 workers are assigned to check out Building 260, better known as the Vamp House now. There used to be a pipe that allowed air inside above the vault door, but that pipe had rusted and crumbled shut decades ago. So, these workers are tasked with getting inside. The team is drilling a golf ball-sized hole through the many inches of steel-reinforced doors when they finally break through. As soon as the hole opens to the inside of the building, the Geiger counters start buzzing. And now, it's an emergency. The dozen men who had just been exposed to radiation are immediately taken away for decontamination procedures.
All this from one little hole in the building?
One little hole. And part of the problem is that 6 of the 12 workers are civilians.
Civilians not beholden to any kind of secret oath, I'm guessing.
No, they didn't sign up for radiation exposure. So the following day, a radiation response team from Brooks Air Force Base in Texas arrives at the site. The thing about radioactivity is that there are tools that can tell you exactly what kind of particles are in the environment. Not only that, radiation gives off a kind of signature that can even tell you the origins.
So with the right tools, the folks at Brooks Air Force Base should know exactly what they're dealing with.
Then, on January 12th, the Loring Air Force Base Public Affairs Office issues a statement that radon gas was reported outside of Building 260. Radon.
Quick lesson on radon. It's naturally occurring. If you're a homeowner, you may have had your home tested for radon before you moved in. Radon gas is odorless and colorless and quickly dissipates when there's ventilation.
So you're not buying it?
No, I don't think I am.
Neither were some of the workers exposed because pretty soon, those elected officials we mentioned earlier?
Yeah, it's Senators Cohen, Mitchell, and Representative Olympia Snowe.
Right. They start calling for an investigation because they want to know, are neighboring communities in danger? Is drinking water in danger? Farmland?
And we have to remember it's 1992.
Right.
Chernobyl was just 6 years ago.
Sure.
No one wants an event like that in northern Maine, close enough to the Canadian border to make this an international incident.
So the state of Maine gets involved. Now, they do find some radon gas in and around the building, which is a surprise to no one. I mean, you've had this building locked up for 30 years. It's to be expected.
But now the newspapers have gotten their hands on this story, and the public is concerned.
By late January, the Air Force agrees to wait until warmer weather to crack this building open, and they agree to allow civilian state officials to observe.
Now, some of the questions these elected officials are asking are questions like, was radioactive material ever stored inside this building?
To which the Air Force can't officially say. I mean, there's no longer a record of it. So they claim.
Which, could actually be true.
Yeah, if you look into the history, it's pretty obvious storing the fissionable material is exactly what you'd use this building for.
It's now the spring, and it's decided on May 21st that Building 260 would be pried open, examined, and then turned over to the base disposal agency.
The team involved in this have to go through extra training for everything they might encounter inside. From a radioactive nuclear material spill to
decades-old radioactive corpses who may have turned into mutant zombie vampires by now.
Right, something like that. So the team cuts through the heavy outer door, and they take their first look inside.
They see a small hallway that leads to 4 more metal doors covering 2 rooms on each side of the hallway.
They have to cut through each of those doors as well. They get the first door open and peek inside. Nothing.
They get to the second door, open and shine a light inside. It's also empty.
The third door reveals the same, but the fourth door gives them a little more trouble. Still, they get it open and find some empty shelves inside. They claim all radioactivity and environmental levels are what they expected to find. And that brings us back to today. Again.
Okay, empty shelves in the last room.
Yeah, that struck me too.
Is it possible way back around 1962 when they're emptying Building 260 of all those fissionable capsules that one leaked? Or maybe spilled? And that's why they sealed the place up in a hurry? Just to get far away from it?
Well, it's possible.
All right. Could this be a cover-up?
It could be, but if there was a spill and people died, that's definitely something the military would have kept out of the public. But the fact remains that someone back in the mid-1990s determined this building to be safe enough to turn it over into a wildlife refuge because the internet is filling up with pictures of people exploring all over this building.
A wildlife refuge officially owned by the U.S. government.
Yeah, good point. It is run by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service.
Then there were those tunnels underneath the complex. David Hammond explains.
When you're kind of a bored security guy, you go explore these things. And yeah, my squad and I, we've opened a couple of these and looked inside, flashlights around, and they just, some of them are extremely decayed. Some of them are full of, melt water from the snow. And they go on all over. And that was one thing, other than, it's part of the Manhattan Project. No one could ever truly explain why all the tunnels are under there.
And here we are chasing a Cold War legend that's still hanging around because a building that looks as strange as the Vamp House is going to beg a few questions.
Questions we either can't answer or we're not allowed to answer, which only adds to the mystery. We'll give David Hammond the last word on this one.
Just stay out of the Vamp House.
We love it when, like David, you reach out to us with some strange tale you heard in New England, and we get to investigate to find out sometimes there's a lot more to the story. Feel free to reach out to us through our website, through our super secret Facebook group, or through our fancy new smartphone app.
And if you'd like to see all kinds of pictures of the Vamp House or Loring Air Force Base, just head to our website and click on episode 157. We'd like to thank David Hammond for not only tipping us off on the story, but for taking us through this one. And of course, our theme music is by John Judd.
Hi, this is Lauren Middleton from Forest City Marketing. The person who developed the New England Legends app. Until next time, remember, the bizarre is closer than you think. In fact, it can be as close as your smartphone.